The kitchen smelled like grease and desperation. Elena Moretti had worked at Sal's diner for 3 years, and the scent had soaked into her skin so deeply she couldn't wash it out anymore. Not that she'd tried very hard lately. Trying required energy she didn't have. She moved between tables with practiced efficiency, refilling coffee cups and clearing plates while her mind calculated numbers that never added up right. Rent was due in 5 days. The electricity bill sat unopened in her purse because looking at it wouldn't change the fact that she didn't have the money. And her brother's medication, the expensive kind that kept his seizures under control, cost more than she made in 2 weeks. "Elena, table 7 needs their check." Sal's voice cut through her thoughts. He wasn't a bad boss, just tired like everyone else in this neighborhood. Southside Chicago didn't produce dreams anymore, just people trying to survive until tomorrow. On it. She grabbed the receipt book and headed to table 7, pasting on the smile that came automatically now. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Fake but functional. The couple barely looked at her as they counted out exact change. No tip. She didn't expect one. Nobody had extra money around here. The lunch rush ended around 2 in the afternoon. Elena's feet ached in shoes that were falling apart, the sole separating from the left one just enough to let in water when it rained. She couldn't afford new ones. Couldn't afford anything beyond the bare minimum of survival. "You okay, honey?" Rita, the other waitress, touched her arm gently. Rita was 60-something with grandchildren she talked about constantly. The kind of woman who still believed things could get better if you just worked hard enough. "Fine." Elena forced another smile. "Just tired." "You look more than tired. You look like you're about to collapse." Rita's eyes were too knowing, too kind. "When's the last time you ate something?" Elena couldn't remember. Yesterday morning, maybe. She'd given her. Portion to Marco last night because he'd been having a bad day, his hands shaking from medication adjustments. 18 years old and his whole life was doctors and pills and seizures that came without warning. "I ate." The lie tasted bitter. "I'm good." Rita didn't believe her. Elena could tell, but the older woman just squeezed her arm and went back to wiping down tables. The diner was nearly empty now, just a few regulars nursing coffee and pretending they had somewhere better to be. Elena checked her phone. 2 texts from Marco asking when she'd be home, 1 notification from the bank about insufficient funds, and 3 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize but knew anyway. Tommy Vega didn't take no for an answer. Her stomach twisted with familiar dread. 3 months ago, when Marco had his worst seizure yet, and the hospital bills piled up faster than she could count, she'd made a mistake. A desperate, stupid mistake. She'd gone to Tommy Vega, a loan shark who operated out of a pawn shop on Halstead Street, and borrowed $5,000 at an interest rate that should have been illegal. It was illegal, probably, but legality didn't matter when your brother was seizing on the kitchen floor and you didn't know if he'd wake up this time. She'd missed 2 payments. The interest kept compounding. Tommy's calls kept coming. And last week, his patience had run out. "You got 1 more week, Elena." His voice had been pleasant, almost friendly. That's what made it terrifying. "Then I start taking payment in other ways. And you won't like those ways, I promise you that." She knew what he meant. Girls who owed Tommy money had options. None of them involved keeping their dignity intact. Elena's hands shook as she tied her apron strings tighter. 1 more week. She needed to make $800 in 1 week, or Tommy would come collecting. She'd picked up every extra shift possible, but it still wasn't enough. It was never enough. "Elena?" Sal called from the kitchen. "You mind closing tonight?" Jenny called in sick. Another shift, another few hours, another maybe $40 if she was lucky. "Sure," she said. "No problem." She stayed until 11 at night, her feet screaming and her back aching. The dinner crowd had been slightly better. A few decent tips from people who still remembered what it felt like to struggle. She counted her money in the bathroom before leaving. $63. Added to what she'd saved, she had maybe $400 total. Not enough. Not nearly enough. The walk home took 20 minutes through streets that got darker and more dangerous with every block. Elena kept her head down. Keys threaded between her fingers like claws. She'd been mugged twice in the past year. The first time they'd taken her purse. The second time they'd taken more than that, leaving bruises that had taken weeks to fade. She was 3 blocks from her apartment when she heard footsteps behind her. Don't run. Running made you pray. She kept walking, steady and purposeful, like she belonged here, Like she wasn't terrified. Elena Moretti. The voice made her blood freeze. She turned slowly. 3 men stood under a broken streetlight, their faces half-shadowed but recognizable. Tommy's guys. She knew their names. Ray, Marcus, and the tall one everyone called Snake because of the tattoo that crawled up his neck. "Tommy wants to talk to you," Ray said. He was the youngest, maybe 25, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm working on getting him his money." Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I just need a few more days." "That's not what he sent us for." Snake stepped closer. He smelled like cigarettes and something chemical, probably drugs. "He's done waiting. Says it's time to discuss alternative payment arrangements." Her stomach dropped. "I don't want alternatives. I'll get him the money." "How?" Marcus spoke for the first time. He was older, harder, with scars that suggested he'd been doing this a long time. "You make minimum wage plus tips. The math doesn't work, sweetheart. You'll never catch up on what you owe." "I'll figure it out. Tommy's already figured it out for you." Ray grabbed her arm, fingers digging into her bicep hard enough to bruise. "He's got a friend who runs a club downtown. Private parties, high-end clients. You work off your debt there. Few months. You're clean. Easy. Not easy. Never easy." She knew exactly what kind of clubs took girls with debts they couldn't pay. No. That wasn't a question. Snake moved behind her, blocking her escape route. "You come with us now, or we take you. Your choice how this goes." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked around desperately. The street was empty, windows dark, nobody awake or willing to help. "My brother. He needs me. He can't be alone. Should have thought about that before you borrowed money you couldn't repay." Ray pulled harder, dragging her toward a van parked at the curb. She fought then. Not smart, probably suicidal, but the thought of Marco waking up alone, having a seizure with nobody there to help, made her desperate. She twisted, clawed at Ray's face, screamed as loud as she could. Marcus hit her. Hard. Across the face with the back of his hand. Her head snapped sideways, pain exploding through her cheekbone. She tasted blood, warm and metallic. "Stupid bitch." He grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. "You want to do this the hard way? We can do it the hard way." Snake pulled out a knife. Not to threaten, she realized with horror. To use. He pressed it against her side, just under her ribs. "Scream again and I'll make sure it's the last sound you make." The blade bit into her skin through her shirt. Shallow, just enough to break the surface. Blood bloomed warm and wet against her side. Elena gasped, tears streaming down her face. They dragged her toward the van. She couldn't fight anymore. Couldn't do anything except stumble forward while blood soaked into her clothes. This was how it ended. This was how she disappeared. Marco would wake up alone, would call her phone over and over, would eventually realize she wasn't coming back. "Please." The word fell out of her mouth, desperate and pathetic. "Please, my brother needs me. He's sick. He'll die without his medication." "Should have thought about that," Ray started. "Let her go." The voice came from behind them, low and absolute, the kind of voice that expected obedience because it had never been denied. Elena's captors froze. Snake's knife pressed harder against her side, making her gasp. Ray's grip tightened on her arm, but they'd stopped moving. "This doesn't concern you." Marcus spoke without turning around, but Elena heard the uncertainty in his voice. "Walk away." "I don't walk away from things that happen on my streets." Footsteps approached, measured and unhurried. "And this is definitely my street." Elena managed to turn her head just enough to see him. Tall, maybe 6'2", wearing a dark coat that probably cost more than her annual rent. His hair was black, pushed back from a face that looked carved from marble, all sharp angles and severe beauty. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s maybe, but he carried himself like someone who'd been in control for a lifetime. What caught her attention, what made her breath stop entirely, was his eyes. Dark, almost black, and completely devoid of mercy. "Mr. Cardano." Ray's voice had changed completely, fear replacing arrogance. "We didn't know you were in the area. Clearly." The man, Cardano, moved closer. Elena could see him better now, expensive suit under the coat, a thin scar through his left eyebrow, hands in his pockets, relaxed, like he was discussing the weather instead of watching a woman get assaulted. "Who's the girl?" Nobody. Marcus finally released her hair. Just collecting a debt for Tommy Vega. Tommy Vega, Cardano said. The name like it tasted bad. The loan shark who operates, without permission in my territory. That Tommy Vega? Silence. Heavy and suffocating. I asked a question. Cardano's tone didn't change, but something in the air shifted. Became dangerous. Yes, sir. Snake's knife slowly pulled away from Elena's side. He sent us to collect from her. She owes him 8,000. How much did she borrow? 5,000. 3 months ago, Elena added, before she could stop herself. Her voice shook, but she met Cardano's eyes. 3 months ago, the interest is predatory. One of Cardano's eyebrows rose slightly. She speaks, and coherently, despite bleeding. His gaze dropped to her side where blood had soaked through her shirt. Put her down. Mr. Cardano, Tommy's going to be pissed if we don't. Do I look like I care what Tommy Vega thinks? Now there was steel in his voice. Pure, cold steel. Put her down. Ray released her arm immediately. Elena stumbled, her knees weak. She pressed her hand against her bleeding side, feeling warm blood seep between her fingers. The cut wasn't deep, but it wouldn't stop bleeding. Go back to Tommy. Cardano pulled his hands from his pockets, and Elena saw what the casual stance had hidden. He wore rings on several fingers, heavy gold that caught the streetlight, but more importantly, she saw the gun holstered under his arm, visible for just a second when his coat shifted. Tell him Nico Cardano is very interested in discussing his business practices. Tell him I'll be visiting soon. And tell him his debt collectors just forfeited a very expensive asset. Sir, you can't just, I can do whatever I want. This is my city. Nico's voice went soft, which somehow made it worse. Would you like to debate that point? Because I'm happy to demonstrate exactly how much authority I have here. They ran, actually ran, scrambling into their van and peeling away fast enough to leave tire marks. Elena watched them go, then her knees gave out. She hit the pavement hard, pain shooting through her kneecaps. Blood dripped from her side onto the concrete, dark puddles that looked black under the streetlight. I'm sorry. The words came automatically, trained into her by years of apologizing for existing, for struggling, for being in the way. I'm sorry I'm bleeding on your street. She looked up at Nico Cardano, this man who'd saved her for reasons she didn't understand, and felt tears burn her eyes. I'm sorry. Nico stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something completely unexpected. He crouched down, bringing himself to her level. Up close, she could see more details. The 5 o'clock shadow along his jaw, the silver cuff links at his wrists, the way his dark eyes studied her face like he was memorizing every detail. You're apologizing for bleeding. It wasn't a question, but there was something almost curious in his tone. After being stabbed and threatened on my street, I didn't mean to cause trouble. Elena pressed harder against her side. The bleeding wasn't stopping. Actually, it might be getting worse. Her head felt light, floaty. I'll leave. I won't bother you. You'll pass out before you make it 10 feet. Nico tilted his head slightly. How much blood have you lost today? Before this, I mean. What? You're pale, malnourished. There are circles under your eyes dark enough to be bruises. This isn't your first injury recently. He wasn't asking. He was observing, cataloging. When's the last time you slept through the night? Elena couldn't remember. I work a lot, and eat never, apparently. Nico stood smoothly, then held out his hand. The same hand that moments ago had signaled enough authority to make 3 violent men flee. Can you stand? She stared at his hand. Clean, manicured, wearing rings that probably cost more than everything she owned combined. I don't understand what's happening. You're bleeding on my street. I'm offering to help you not die on it. The math is simple. His hand remained steady, waiting. Take it or don't. But decide quickly, because you're losing blood, and I have a dinner reservation in 20 minutes. Elena placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, careful, and he pulled her to her feet with surprising gentleness. The world tilted sideways. She stumbled forward, and suddenly his arm was around her waist, supporting most of her weight. Easy. His voice was closer now, right beside her ear. When did you last eat? Yesterday morning. The truth came out because she was too dizzy to lie. I gave my dinner to my brother. He needs to eat with his medication, and we didn't have enough for both of us. Nico went very still. Your brother, the sick one they mentioned? Marco. He's 18. Epilepsy. Severe. Elena's words started slurring together. She could feel consciousness trying to slip away. If I don't go home, he'll be alone. He can't be alone during a seizure. He could die. Address. What? Your address. Where's your brother? Nico was already moving, guiding her toward a car parked half a block away. A very expensive car, black and sleek, like something from a movie. Elena rattled off her address automatically. Why do you need to know? Because you're not going anywhere except a hospital. Nico opened the passenger door with his free hand, while keeping her upright with the other. And your brother needs someone to check on him. I can't afford a hospital. Panic cut through the fog in her head. I already owe $8,000. I can't add more debt. I'll be fine. Just let me go home. You have a knife wound that won't stop bleeding. You're malnourished to the point of potential organ damage, and you can barely stand. Nico helped her into the passenger seat, his movements efficient but surprisingly gentle. You're not fine. You haven't been fine for a very long time. He crouched beside the open door, meeting her eyes directly. I'm going to help you. Not because you owe me, not because I want something in return, because you're bleeding, on my street and apparently apologizing for it, which is the most pathetic thing I've seen in months. I don't need pity. Good, because I don't do pity. Nico reached across her and pulled the seatbelt over her lap, clicking it into place. I do business. And right now, my business is making sure you don't bleed out. We'll discuss terms later. Terms? Elena's vision was definitely fading now. Black spots danced at the edges. What terms? Later. He closed her door and moved around to the driver's side. The car was already running. Had it been this whole time? She hadn't noticed. My brother, she said again, weakly. Marco. Someone needs to check on him. He can't wake up alone. Nico pulled out his phone, dialed without looking away from the road as he pulled into traffic. Luca, I need you to send someone to an address. I'm texting you. 18-year-old kid, epileptic, probably asleep. Have Romano watch him until I give further instructions. Make sure the kid takes his medication if he wakes up. He paused. No, don't scare him. Just tell him his sister sent you. Tell him Elena's fine and she'll be home soon. He hung up and glanced at Elena. Satisfied? She wanted to protest, to ask who Romano was and why she should trust a stranger with her brother. But her head was so heavy and the car was warm and she hadn't felt safe in so long that the sensation was almost overwhelming. Why are you helping me? The question came out barely a whisper. Nico was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the road, jaw tight. Because 3 men were about to disappear you from my street, and I don't allow that kind of thing in my territory. Because you're bleeding and apologizing for it instead of demanding help like you have every right to. Because you gave your dinner to your sick brother and worked yourself into the ground trying to keep him alive. He glanced at her, something unreadable in his dark eyes. Because someone should help you. And apparently, I'm the only one available. I can't pay you back. I didn't ask you to. His attention returned to the road. Close your eyes. We'll be at the hospital in 10 minutes. Elena tried to stay awake. Tried to watch where they were going, to maintain some sense of control over a situation that had spiraled completely out of her grasp. But she was so tired. So impossibly tired. And for the first time in 3 years, someone else was making the decisions, carrying the weight, telling her it was okay to let go. Her eyes closed. The last thing she felt before unconsciousness took her was Nico's hand briefly touching her shoulder, checking if she was still breathing. The last thing she heard was his voice, quiet but certain. You're safe now. I've got you. Then darkness swallowed everything. Elena woke up to white. White ceiling, white walls, white sheets that smelled like antiseptic and laundry detergent. Hospital. She was in a hospital. Her side ached with a deep, throbbing pain that meant stitches. Her head felt stuffed with cotton, and there was an IV in her arm, clear fluid dripping steadily into her veins. She sat up too fast and immediately regretted it. The room spun, her stomach lurched, and a hand appeared on her shoulder, gently pushing her back down. Easy. The voice was female, middle-aged, professional. You've lost quite a bit of blood. Let yourself wake up slowly. Elena blinked until her vision cleared. A nurse stood beside her bed, checking monitors with practiced efficiency. She had kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. My brother. Elena's throat was dry, her voice scratchy. Marco. I need to call him. He'll be worried. Your brother is fine. The nurse adjusted Elena's the four. Mr. Cardano had someone check on him. Apparently he's asleep and doing well. His medication was taken on schedule. Mr. Cardano. Right. The man who'd appeared like some kind of dark guardian angel and taken control of everything. Where is he? In the waiting room. He's been here for 3 hours? The nurse's expression softened slightly. He paid for your treatment. All of it. Refused to leave until we confirmed you'd be okay. 3 hours. Elena looked at the window where gray early morning light filtered through. She'd been unconscious for hours. What time is it? Almost 5 in the morning. The nurse made a note on her chart. You had a knife wound that required 18 stitches, significant dehydration, and anemia from malnutrition. When's the last time you had a full meal? Elena couldn't remember, couldn't answer. The nurse's expression turned disapproving. You're 24 years old. You should be healthy, strong. Instead, you're barely functioning. If you'd gone another week like this, you would have collapsed. Your organs were starting to show stress from malnutrition. I was doing what I had to do. Elena's voice came out sharper than intended. To keep my brother alive. By killing yourself slowly? The nurse shook her head. That's not noble. That's foolish. Your brother needs you alive, not martyred. Before Elena could respond, the door opened. Nico Cardano walked in like he owned the place. Which, given how the nurse immediately straightened and the security guard outside nodded respectfully, he might as well have. He looked exactly the same as he had hours ago. Perfectly pressed suit. No hair out of place. Expression unreadable. The only difference was he'd removed his coat, and Elena could see the shoulder holster more clearly now. The gun resting there was very real, very present. You're awake. It wasn't a question. Nico dismissed the nurse with a slight gesture, and the woman left without protest. When the door closed, he pulled a chair closer to Elena's bed and sat down with the casual grace of someone completely comfortable in any situation. How do you feel? Confused. Elena met his eyes. In the harsh hospital lighting, she could see more details. The shadows under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. The faint lines around his mouth from stress or maybe from smiling, though she suspected stress was more likely. Why are you still here? Making sure you didn't die seemed prudent. Nico leaned back, one ankle crossing over his knee. Relaxed. But Elena had a feeling he was never truly relaxed. You gave me quite a scare. Your blood pressure dropped significantly in the car. I thought I might have to carry you in myself. Did you? Almost. But you stabilized enough to walk with assistance. His dark eyes studied her face. The doctor said you'll be fine. The knife wound was superficial, mostly blood loss and shock. The bigger concern is your general health. You're severely malnourished and anemic. They want to keep you for observation and get some nutrients into you intravenously. I can't afford to stay here. Elena reached for the IV, intending to remove it. I need to go home. Marco needs me. Your brother is being watched by one of my men. Romano's a former EMT. If Marco has a seizure, Romano knows exactly what to do. Nico didn't move to stop her, but his voice carried absolute authority. And you're not paying for this. I am. Why? The question burst out of her, sharp and desperate. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. I'm nobody. I'm just a waitress who owes money to the wrong people. You apologized for bleeding on my street. Nico said it, like that explained everything. After being stabbed, you apologized. So that tells me everything I need to know about your life up until now. He leaned forward slightly, his intense gaze locked on hers. You've been taught that your existence is an inconvenience, that your suffering is a burden on others, that you should be grateful for scraps and apologetic for needing help. Elena felt her throat tighten. That's not... It is, and it stops now. Nico's voice went soft, which somehow made it more commanding. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay in this hospital until the doctors clear you. You're going to eat the meals they bring you and let them stabilize your health. Then we're going to discuss your situation with Tommy Vega. I owe him $8,000. You owe him nothing. Nico's expression didn't change, but something cold flashed in his eyes. Predatory lending with compound interest designed to trap people in eternal debt is not a legitimate business arrangement. It's exploitation. And I don't tolerate exploitation in my territory. Your territory, Elena repeated slowly. Who are you? Really? Nico tilted his head slightly. You don't know? Should I? Something like amusement crossed his face. Most people in Chicago know exactly who I am, but you work 60-hour weeks and spend every moment focused on keeping your brother alive. You don't have time for local crime politics. Crime politics! Elena's stomach sank. You're Nico Cardano. I run most of the South Side, some of the West Side, several businesses downtown. He said it matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. Some of those businesses are legal. Many are not. All of them are mine. Mafia. The word hung unspoken between them. Elena had heard stories, of course. Everyone had. The Cardano family controlled significant portions of Chicago's underworld. Protection rackets, gambling, money laundering. They were dangerous, powerful, and absolutely not the kind of people you wanted involved in your life. Except one of them had just saved her life. You're scared now, Nico observed her expression. Good. Fear means you're smart enough to understand the situation. But let me be clear about something, Elena Moretti. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. I don't prey on civilians. I don't exploit the vulnerable. And I especially don't tolerate people like Tommy Vega operating in my territory without permission. So this is about territory? About making an example? Partially. He didn't lie to her, Elena noticed. Didn't try to soften it or make himself look better. But it's also about the fact that you're bleeding on my street and apologizing for it. And that level of defeated acceptance makes me... He paused, seeming to search for words. Angry. On your behalf. Elena didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process any of this. I still can't pay you back. Then don't. Nico stood smoothly. Consider it an investment. In what? In the principle that people like you shouldn't be ground into nothing by people like Tommy Vega. He adjusted his cufflinks, a gesture that seemed habitual. Get some rest. Eat when they bring food. I'll come back this evening to check on you. Wait. Elena's hand shot out, catching his wrist before she realized what she was doing. His skin was warm under her fingers. She released him immediately. My brother. Can I see him? Or at least talk to him? He'll be terrified. Nico pulled out his phone, dialed, and handed it to her without a word. It rang twice before a young male voice answered. Hello? Marco? Elena's voice broke. Marco, it's me. Elena. Oh my God, are you okay? This guy Romano showed up and said you were in the hospital but you were fine. But I didn't believe him, and I've been freaking out. I'm okay, I promise. I just had a small accident. They're keeping me for observation, but I'm fine. Elena glanced at Nico, who watched her with that unreadable expression. Is Romano treating you okay? He's actually really cool. He made breakfast. Real breakfast, not just cereal. And he knows about epilepsy. He asked about my medication schedule and everything. Marco paused. Elena, what happened? Why are these people helping us? It's complicated. I'll explain when I get home. Elena pressed her hand to her eyes, fighting tears. Did you take your morning medication? Romano already reminded me. He's got it timed out and everything. Marco's voice turned worried again. When are you coming home? Soon. Maybe tomorrow. Until then, Romano's going to stay with you, okay? He's there to help. Okay. Marco didn't sound entirely convinced. I love you, sis. I love you too. So much. Elena ended the call and handed the phone back to Nico. Thank you. Romano will stay with him until you're released. Nico slipped the phone back into his pocket. He's good with kids. You don't need to worry. I always worry. It's my job. Not anymore. Nico moved toward the door, then paused and looked back. From now on, Elena Moretti, you worry about yourself. Let me worry about everything else. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Elena stared at the space he'd occupied, her mind racing. A Mafia boss had saved her life, had paid for her hospital care, was watching her brother, and claimed he was doing it because she'd apologized for bleeding. None of it made sense. But as she lay back against the pillows, feeling the IV drip nutrients into her bloodstream and the pain medication soften the edges of her discomfort, Elena realized something profound. For the first time in 3 years, she felt safe. It was terrifying. The rest of the day passed in a strange haze. Nurses came and went, checking her vitals and bringing food she was actually encouraged to eat. The doctor visited, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Chen, who examined her stitches and frowned at her blood work results. You're severely anemic, Dr. Chen made notes on her tablet. And your vitamin D levels are dangerously low. When's the last time you saw a doctor for a checkup? 3 years ago. Before Marco got sick. Before their parents died. Before everything fell apart. That explains a lot. Dr. Chen's expression softened. We're going to keep you another night for observation. I want to get your nutrient levels stabilized before discharging you. And you need to follow up with a primary care physician within 2 weeks. I don't have insurance. That's already been handled. Dr. Chen said it casually, like it was normal for random crime bosses to pay for comprehensive medical care. All your bills are covered. You just need to focus on recovery. After the doctor left, Elena tried to process everything. Tried to make sense of how her life had shifted so dramatically in less than 12 hours. She'd gone from being stabbed in the street to lying in a private hospital room with round-the-clock care. All because she'd bled in the wrong place at the right time. Or the right place at the right time. She wasn't sure which. Her phone, which someone had thoughtfully plugged in to charge, buzzed with texts from Marco. Romano had apparently let him use his phone to send updates. The messages were mundane, reassuring. They'd watched movies. Romano had ordered pizza. Marco had taken his afternoon medication on schedule. No seizures, no emergencies, no crises. For the first time in years, someone else was handling it. Someone else was making sure Marco was safe, fed, and cared for. The relief was so overwhelming it made Elena's chest tight. She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, the light outside had changed from afternoon to early evening, and Nico Cardano was back, sitting in the chair beside her bed like he'd been there for hours. You're staring at me sleep. Elena's voice came out groggy. That's creepy. I just arrived. There was the faintest hint of amusement in his tone, but you woke up quickly. Good instincts. Elena pushed herself upright, wincing at the pull of stitches. Is Marco okay? He's fine. Romano says he's a good kid. Smart. Asked a lot of questions about where you were and why I was helping. Nico crossed one leg over the other. I told him the truth. That you were hurt, and I happened to be there. He knows there's more to the story. Nico's dark eyes studied her face. But he also knows his sister is safe and being cared for, which is apparently all that matters to him. Elena pulled the thin hospital blanket higher, suddenly self-conscious. In the harsh light, she was aware of how she must look. Unwashed hair, hospital gown, bruises blooming across her arms from IVs and rough handling. Not exactly impressive. What do you want from me? She asked it bluntly, needing to understand. Nobody does this much without expecting something in return. Cynical, but accurate. Nico didn't deny it. I want information first. Tell me about Tommy Vega. How much do you actually owe him? What were the original terms? Elena explained it all. The $5,000 loan 3 months ago. The interest rate of 20% per month, compounding. The missed payments because she couldn't keep up. The total debt that had ballooned to $8,000 despite her making some payments. 20% monthly compound interest. Nico's expression went cold. That's not lending. That's systematic theft. It was my only option. It wasn't. You just didn't know the other options existed. He leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. I'm going to have a conversation with Tommy Vega about operating without permission in my territory. That conversation will result in him canceling your debt entirely and leaving Chicago. Permanently. He won't just cancel it. He'll come after me. He won't. Nico's voice carried absolute certainty. Because I'll make it very clear that touching you means dying. And Tommy Vega, for all his faults, isn't suicidal. Elena's stomach twisted. You're going to threaten him, because of me. I'm going to eliminate a problem that should have been handled months ago. You're just the catalyst that brought it to my attention. Nico's gaze didn't waver. Don't romanticize this, Elena. I'm not doing this purely out of goodness. Tommy's been operating in my territory without paying tribute. He's been preying on vulnerable people and creating instability. That affects my business. This would have happened eventually. You just accelerated the timeline. So I'm convenient. You're a reason. He corrected. There's a difference. But yes, your situation makes this easier to justify to my associates who might question why I'm spending resources on one woman's debt. At least he was honest. Elena appreciated that more than she probably should. What happens after? After Tommy's gone and my debt is canceled? Do I owe you instead? No. Nico said it firmly. You don't owe me anything. But I do want something from you. Here it comes, Elena thought. The catch. The price. What? I want you to accept help. Real help, not just the hospital bill. Nico pulled an envelope from his inside jacket pocket and set it on her bedside table. Inside is $5,000 in cash. Enough to cover 3 months of rent, your brother's medication, and food. Enough to let you breathe for the first time in years. Elena stared at the envelope like it might explode. I can't take that. Why not? Because I don't know how to pay you back. Because accepting money from you means being in your debt. And I've seen what happens to people who owe money to dangerous men. I'm not Tommy Vega. Nico's voice went hard. I don't prey on the vulnerable. I don't force women into situations they don't want. And I sure as hell don't charge compound interest designed to trap people forever. Then what do you want? Really? Nico was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. I want you to not apologize for bleeding anymore. I want you to eat full meals and sleep through the night and take care of yourself so your brother doesn't lose the only family he has left. I want you to accept that sometimes help doesn't come with strings attached. There are always strings. Not with me. Not with you. He stood, towering over her bed. Take the money, Elena. Use it to survive. When you're ready, when you're healthy and stable, we'll talk about whether you want to keep working at that diner, or if you want something better. Something better like what? I own several legitimate businesses, restaurants, a security company, real estate. All of them need employees. All of them pay fair wages with actual benefits. Nico adjusted his jacket. But that's a conversation for later. Right now, you need to focus on recovering. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Tomorrow, when you're discharged, Romano will drive you and Marco to a new apartment. It's in a better neighborhood, close to Marco's new school. New school? What are you talking about? Your brother's too smart to waste away in an underfunded public school with overcrowded classes. I've arranged a spot for him at St. Augustine's Academy. Full scholarship, including books and supplies. Elena's throat closed. Why would you do that? Because he deserves better than what he has. And because you can't give it to him working 60 hours a week at a diner and slowly starving yourself to death. Nico's expression softened slightly. Let me do this, Elena. Let me help. I don't understand you. The words came out whispered. I don't understand any of this. You don't need to understand. You just need to accept it. He opened the door. Get some rest. I'll see you tomorrow. Then he was gone again, leaving Elena alone with an envelope full of cash and the overwhelming realization that her entire life had just changed. She didn't sleep well that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the knife pressing against her side, felt the terror of being dragged toward that van. But mixed with the nightmares were fragments of something else. Nico's voice saying she was safe, his hand steady on her shoulder, the absolute certainty in his tone when he promised Marco would be cared for. By morning, Elena had made a decision. She didn't understand Nico Cardano's motivations, didn't trust that help could come without eventual cost, but she was smart enough to recognize when refusing assistance would hurt Marco more than it would protect her pride. Dr. Chen discharged her at 10 in the morning with a prescription for iron supplements, instructions to eat 3 full meals daily, and a follow-up appointment already scheduled. Elena changed back into her blood-stained clothes from the night before, the fabric stiff and ruined, and tried not to think about how she looked. Romano was waiting in the lobby. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes and the build of someone who'd spent time in the military. He stood when he saw her, his posture respectful, but not subservient. Miss Moretti. He extended his hand. I'm Romano. I've been staying with your brother. Elena shook his hand, studying his face. Is he okay? Really okay? He's great. Smart kid. Asks good questions. Romano's smile seemed genuine. He's waiting in the car, Mr. Cardano thought you'd want to see him immediately. The car was the same expensive black vehicle from last night. Marco sat in the back seat, and the moment he saw Elena, his face crumpled with relief. She slid in beside him, and he grabbed her in a hug so tight it pulled at her stitches. I was so scared. Marco's voice muffled against her shoulder. Romano said you were fine, but I didn't know if that was true or if he was just saying it to keep me calm. I'm fine, I promise. Elena pulled back to look at him. He looked better than he had in months. Clean clothes, hair washed, face less gaunt. You look good. Did you eat? Romano made me eat everything. Said you'd kill him if I didn't. Marco glanced at Romano, who'd gotten into the driver's seat. He's actually pretty cool. He knows about seizures and everything. He didn't freak out when I told him about my condition. I'm an EMT, Romano said, pulling into traffic. Or I was, before I started working for Mr. Cardano. I've handled plenty of seizure patients. Elena wanted to ask what working for Mr. Cardano actually meant, but Marco was still talking, words tumbling out in a nervous rush. And Elena, you won't believe this apartment Mr. Cardano got for us. It's huge. Like, actually huge. 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen, and the building has security. Romano showed me last night. Marco's excitement was palpable, and he said something about a new school. Street. Augustine's. We'll talk about it. Elena caught Romano's eyes in the rearview mirror. Where exactly is this apartment? Lincoln Park. Good neighborhood, close to the school, easy commute to wherever you decide to work. Romano's tone was carefully neutral. Mr. Cardano thought you'd prefer somewhere safe. Lincoln Park, one of the nicer areas of Chicago. Elena had never even considered living there because the rent alone would have consumed her entire income. How much is the rent? Taken care of for the first year. Romano said it like it was nothing. Like a year's worth of rent in Lincoln Park wasn't tens of thousands of dollars. After that, we can reassess based on your employment situation. This is too much. Elena's throat tightened. I can't accept all of this. You can, and you will. Romano's voice was kind but firm. Mr. Cardano doesn't make offers he doesn't intend to follow through on. And he specifically said you'd try to refuse, and I should ignore your protests and take you to the apartment anyway. Marco squeezed her hand. Elena, I saw it. It's really nice. And it's safe. The neighborhood is safe. We could actually walk around at night without worrying. The longing in his voice broke something in her chest. Marco was 18 years old. He should be thinking about college and parties and girls, not whether he'd be mugged walking home from school. Okay. The word came out smaller than she intended. Okay. We'll look at it. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a beautiful brick building with actual security at the entrance. The moment Elena walked through the door, she understood why Marco had been so excited. Hardwood floors, large, windows letting in natural light, a kitchen with modern appliances that actually worked. The furniture was simple but good quality. 2 bedrooms, both with real beds and dressers. The lease is in your name, Romano said, handing her a folder. All the utilities are set up. Internet, electricity, heat. There's also a phone number in there for Mr. Cardano's personal assistant. If you need anything at all, you call that number. Elena stood in the middle of the living room, trying to process it. Why is he doing this? Romano's expression turned thoughtful. Mr. Cardano is complicated, but I've worked for him for 5 years. And I've learned one thing. When he decides someone is under his protection, he's absolute about it. You're under his protection now. That means you get the full weight of his resources. But why? I'm nobody. You apologized for bleeding on his street. Romano said it like that explained everything, just like Nico had. Mr. Cardano has very particular triggers. People who've been beaten down so thoroughly they apologize for their own suffering. That's one of them. Makes him furious on their behalf. That's a weird trigger for a criminal. He's a criminal with a code. Romano moved toward the door. I'll be around for the next few days, helping you get settled. Marco knows how to reach me if he needs anything. And Mr. Cardano will probably stop by tomorrow to check on you. After Romano left, Elena and Marco explored the apartment in stunned silence. The refrigerator was fully stocked. The bathroom had towels, soap, all the basics. The bedrooms had sheets, pillows, everything needed to actually live. This is insane, Marco said, flopping onto his new bed. This is actually insane. Who is this guy? Nico Cardano. He runs most of the South Side. Elena sat on the edge of his bed. He's Mafia, Marco. This isn't a charity. This is a crime boss deciding where his responsibility for reasons I don't fully understand. Does he want something from you? Like, something bad? He says no. Says this comes with no strings. Elena rubbed her face. But there are always strings. Maybe. Marco sat up, his expression serious beyond his years. Or maybe we got lucky. Maybe the right person found you at the right time. And for once, the universe is on our side. Elena wanted to believe that. wanted to accept that help could be genuine, that safety could be real. But 3 years of crushing struggle had taught her to be suspicious of anything that seemed too good to be true. That night, she lay in her new bed in her new bedroom, staring at the ceiling. The mattress was comfortable, the sheets were soft, and for the first time in years, she wasn't worried about whether they'd have electricity tomorrow or if Marco would have his medication. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Nico came by the next afternoon, while Marco was out exploring the neighborhood with Romano. Elena had spent the morning organizing their meager belongings in this space that was far too nice for what they owned. She answered the door in jeans and a clean shirt, her hair pulled back, the bandage on her side hidden under her clothes. "How are you settling in?" Nico asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He wore dark slacks and a white button-down, no jacket, and somehow looked both more casual and more dangerous than he had in his full suit. "It's..." Elena searched for words. "This is too much, all of it. You've said that already. Multiple times." Nico walked through the apartment, examining it with a critical eye. "Is something wrong with it? Is anything broken or missing?" "No, it's perfect. That's the problem." He turned to look at her, one eyebrow raised. Most people don't consider perfection a problem. Most people don't suddenly get rescued by a mafia boss and handed an entirely new life. Elena crossed her arms. "I need to understand what you actually want from me. Because this level of help, this level of investment, it doesn't make sense unless there's an end game I'm not seeing." Nico was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to the window, looking out over the street below. "When I was 12 years old, my mother was killed by a rival family. She'd been shopping for groceries. Wrong place, wrong time. Crossfire from a territory dispute she had nothing to do with." Elena's breath caught. She hadn't expected honesty, and certainly not something this personal. "My father went insane with grief." Nico's voice was flat, emotionless. "He burned down half the city getting revenge. Killed everyone even remotely connected to the people who'd killed her. It took 5 years, but he did it. Systematically, completely. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago." Nico turned back to her. "But it taught me something important. Innocent people get caught in crossfire. People who are just trying to survive, who are doing nothing wrong. They get destroyed by systems they have no power over. And I decided then that when I took over, when it was my turn to run things, I wouldn't allow that. Not in my territory. So this is about guilt? About making up for your mother?" "This is about principle," Nico corrected. "You were being victimized by someone operating illegally in my territory. Someone I should have shut down months ago but didn't because I was focused on bigger problems. You got hurt because I wasn't paying attention. That makes it my responsibility to fix. That's a very organized way to think about human suffering. It's the only way to think about it and stay sane in my line of work." Nico moved, closer to her, his dark eyes intense. "But it's also true that when I saw you on your knees, bleeding and apologizing, something in me..." He paused, seeming to search for words. "Reacted. Personally, not just professionally." Elena's heart rate kicked up. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm invested in your well-being beyond what's strategically necessary. It means I want you safe, healthy, and stable, for reasons that have nothing to do with territory or business." Nico's jaw tightened. "It means you should probably be more worried about my motivations than you are." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm being honest with you, which is more than most people in my position would do." He stepped back, giving her space. "I find you interesting. Your strength, your determination to protect your brother despite impossible odds, the fact that you apologized for bleeding instead of demanding help, all of it interests me. Interest isn't the same as caring. No, but it's the beginning of it." Nico's expression was unreadable. "I'm not good at this, at explaining things that aren't business transactions. But I want you to stay here, in this apartment, and let me help you rebuild your life. Not because you owe me, not because I want something from you eventually, but because I want to see what you become when you're not just surviving." The words hung between them, heavy with implications Elena wasn't sure she was ready to examine. "And if I say no? If I take Marco and we leave, go back to our old life? Then I'd ensure your debt with Tommy is still canceled, make sure you're safe, and let you go." Nico said it simply. "This only works if you choose it, freely, without coercion. But you're hoping I choose to stay." "Yes, no hesitation. I'm hoping you choose to stay." Elena looked around the apartment. At the safety, the comfort, the possibility of a life where she wasn't constantly drowning. Then she looked at Nico Cardano, this dangerous man who'd saved her for reasons she still didn't fully understand, but that felt genuine in a way she couldn't quite articulate. I'll stay. The decision came out quiet but certain. For Marco. Because he deserves this. But I need to work. I need to earn money, to contribute. I can't just take handouts forever. Agreed. I own a restaurant in the Loop. Upscale Italian place called Domenico's. The manager needs a new hostess. Pays $18 an hour plus a percentage of tips that waitstaff shares with front of house. You'd work dinner shifts. 5 nights a week. Weekends off to spend with Marco. $18 an hour. That was more than double what she'd made at Sal's. That's too much for a hostess position. It's fair pay for good work, and you'll earn it. My restaurant has high standards. Nico pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. Call the manager tomorrow. Her name is Sophia. She'll get you set up with paperwork and training. Elena took the card, her fingers brushing his briefly. Thank you. For all of this. I know I keep saying it's too much, but I also know I'd be stupid not to accept. You're welcome. Nico's expression softened slightly. One more thing. Tomorrow night, I'm having dinner with some associates. It's at Domenico's, private room. I'd like you to come. Why? Because they need to see you. Need to understand that you're under my protection officially. It'll prevent problems down the line. Nico moved toward the door. And because I'd like your company. But mostly the first reason. Will it be dangerous? No. Just businessmen discussing business. But some of them are curious about why I'm investing resources in a waitress and her brother. Your presence will answer those questions more effectively than any explanation I could give. Elena's stomach twisted with anxiety. I don't know how to act at those kinds of dinners. Be yourself. That's all I want. Nico opened the door, then paused. Wear something nice. I'll send a dress over tomorrow afternoon, and Romano will pick you up at 7. You're sending me a dress? I'm ensuring you're comfortable. There's a difference. Nico's lips quirked slightly, not quite a smile. Trust me, Elena. I know what I'm doing. After he left, Elena stood in the middle of her new apartment, processing everything. A job, a dinner with Mafia associates. A man who claimed he wanted her safe for reasons that went beyond business, but refused to define exactly what those reasons were. She was in over her head. Completely, utterly in over her head. But Marco was safe. They had a home. And for the first time in 3 years, she had options beyond barely surviving. That had to count for something. The dress arrived the next afternoon in a garment bag with a high-end boutique's logo. Elena opened it with trembling fingers and pulled out something that probably cost more than 2 months of her old rent. Deep emerald green, simple lines, elegant without being flashy. It fit perfectly, which meant Nico had guessed her size accurately. That observation made her feel both cared for and slightly unnerved. Romano picked her up at 7 exactly. Marco whistled when he saw her. You look fancy, he said, grinning. Like, actually fancy. Not trying to look fancy with cheap clothes fancy. Thanks, I think. Elena adjusted the dress nervously. Are you sure you'll be okay alone? Romano already gave me his number. And the building has security. And Mr. Cardano apparently has someone checking on me every hour. Marco rolled his eyes. I'm more supervised than I've ever been in my life. Go. Have dinner with scary crime people. Try not to get murdered. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. But Marco hugged her tight. You look beautiful, sis. For real. The drive to Domenico's took 30 minutes through evening traffic. The restaurant was in a better part of downtown, the kind of place Elena had walked past 1,000 times but never imagined entering. Romano opened her door when they arrived. Mr. Cardano is already inside. Private dining room on the 2nd floor. Romano's expression was kind. You'll be fine. Just be yourself. Easy for him to say. He wasn't about to walk into a room full of criminals. The restaurant was beautiful. All dark wood and soft. Lighting. With the kind of sophisticated atmosphere that screamed money. The hostess recognized Romano immediately and led them upstairs without question. The private dining room was smaller than Elena expected. Elegant table set for 8, expensive wine already poured. Nico stood by the window, and when he turned and saw her, something flickered across his face. Appreciation, Maybe. Or something deeper. Elena. He crossed to her immediately. You look perfect. The dress is beautiful. Thank you. It suits you. Nico placed a hand on the small of her back, the touch light but possessive. Come, meet everyone. The associates were exactly what Elena expected. Well-dressed men in expensive suits, most of them older than Nico, all of them with eyes that calculated everything. There were no women except her. Gentlemen, this is Elena Moretti. Nico's voice carried absolute authority. She's under my personal protection. I expect that to be respected. The men studied her with varying degrees of curiosity. One of them, silver-haired and distinguished, raised his wineglass slightly. Cardano's never brought a woman to a business dinner before, he said. Must be special. She is. Nico guided Elena to a seat beside his at the head of the table. And that's all the discussion we need on the subject. Dinner was formal, the food incredible. Elena mostly stayed quiet, listening to the men discuss territory disputes, upcoming deals, problems with rival families. It was strange, hearing them talk about violence and illegal operations over perfectly seared duck breast and expensive wine. But she also noticed things. The way they all deferred to Nico, not just because of his position, but because they genuinely respected him. The way he handled disputes with calm logic rather than threats. The intelligence behind every decision he made. This wasn't some thuggish crime boss. This was a man running a sophisticated organization with the precision of a Fortune 500 CEO. Halfway through dinner, one of the younger associates, a man named Dominic, with slicked back hair and too much confidence, turned to Elena. So, Miss Moretti, what do you do, besides being under Cardano's protection? The question had an edge to it. Testing. I'm a waitress. Elena met his gaze steadily. Starting at Domenico's next week. Hostess position. Hostess. Dominic's smile was condescending. That's nice. Very nice. And your brother, he's sick? Epilepsy, I heard? Yes. Elena's hands tightened on her napkin under the table. He's 18. He requires medication and monitoring. Must be expensive. Lucky for you, Cardano stepped in. Dominic leaned back in his chair. Must make you feel very grateful. The implication was clear. She was being taken care of because she was sleeping with Nico, or would be soon. It was a test, seeing if she'd react, if she'd defend herself, if she'd show weakness. Nico's expression went cold. Dominic, just his name. One word. But the temperature in the room dropped. I'm just making conversation, Dominic said, but his confidence had wavered. No, you're being deliberately insulting to someone under my protection. Nico's voice was quiet, which made it more terrifying. Would you like to explain why? I didn't mean... You meant exactly what you said. You're questioning my judgment and implying Elena is here because she's trading favors. Nico's dark eyes were merciless. Let me be absolutely clear. Elena Moretti is under my protection because I decided she would be. Her employment at my restaurant is legitimate, and any implication otherwise is an insult to both of us. Do you understand? Dominic had gone pale. Yes, sir. I apologize. Not to me, to her. Dominic turned to Elena, and she saw genuine fear in his eyes. I apologize, Miss Moretti. I was out of line. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. The rest of dinner passed in tense silence, at least around Dominic. The other men continued their discussions. But there was a new carefulness in how they addressed her. Respect born from fear, maybe, but respect nonetheless. After dinner, Nico walked her out to where Romano waited. The night air was cool, refreshing after the intensity of the dining room. I'm sorry about Dominic, Nico said. He was testing boundaries. He won't do it again. You scared him. I needed to. One person questions you, others follow. Better to shut it down immediately. Nico faced her, his expression serious. But his question wasn't entirely unfounded. People will wonder about my motivations, about why I'm protecting you. And what will you tell them? The truth. That you're under my protection because I choose it. That's all the explanation anyone needs. Nico's hand came up, his fingers brushing her cheek gently. But between us, the truth is more complicated. Elena's breath caught. How complicated? I like you, Elena Moretti. More than I should. More than is probably wise. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I want you safe because the alternative is unacceptable to me. And I want you in my life because when I look at you, I see strength, I respect, and vulnerability I want to protect. That's the truth. That's not a business transaction. No, it's not. Nico dropped his hand, stepping back, which is why this only continues if you want it. If the answer is no, if you want me to remain just your employer and protector, I'll respect that. But I needed you to know where I stand. Elena's mind raced. This was dangerous. Getting involved with a man like Nico Cardano was asking for complications she couldn't predict. But it was also honest, raw, real in a way nothing had been for years. I don't know what I want yet, she said finally. But I know I'm not running away. Does that count for something? It counts for everything. Nico's expression softened. Take your time. Figure out what you want. I'm patient when something matters. He opened the car door for her, and Romano drove her home. The entire ride. Elena felt Nico's touch still lingering on her cheek, his words replaying in her mind. She was in trouble. Deep, complicated, probably dangerous trouble. But for the first time in years, she also felt alive. The next 2 weeks fell into a strange new rhythm. Elena started at Domenico's and quickly realized the job was legitimate. Sophia, the manager, was professional and demanding. The work was real. The customers expected excellence. And Elena earned every dollar she made. But she also couldn't escape the reality of who owned the restaurant. Nico came by most nights, usually late, always to the private dining rooms. Sometimes he'd stop at the hostess stand, ask how her shift went, make sure she was eating enough. Sometimes he just nodded to her across the room, a silent acknowledgement that was oddly intimate. The staff treated her differently because of him. Not badly, but carefully, like she was something precious that could break, or more likely, like she was someone the boss cared about, and disrespecting her would have consequences. Marco thrived at Street Augustine's. He came home every day talking about classes, about teachers who actually cared, about making friends for the first time in years. His seizures decreased in frequency, whether from better medication management or reduced stress. Elena wasn't sure. Probably both. Romano checked on them regularly, becoming something like a friend. He taught Marco how to cook properly, took him to museums on weekends, filled the role of protective older brother with surprising ease. And through it all, Elena felt herself watching Nico Cardano, learning him, the way he ran his organization with precision and unexpected fairness, the way he treated his people with respect but expected absolute loyalty, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. 3 weeks after moving into the apartment, Elena's phone rang late at night. Nico's name on the screen. Hello? I need you to do something for Day. His voice was tight, controlled. And I need you to not ask questions until later. Elena sat up in bed, instantly alert. What's wrong? Romano's going to pick you and Marco up in 10 minutes. Pack a bag, essentials only. You're staying somewhere else for a few days. Nico, what happened? Tommy Vega's associates found out I canceled his operation. They're not happy. There's been some retaliation. His voice was calm, but Elena heard the underlying tension. You're not in immediate danger, but I'm not taking chances. You and Marco are going to a safe house until this is resolved. Elena's stomach dropped. This is because of me. Because you helped me. This is because Tommy Vega was operating illegally and refused to stop. You're just the excuse I used to shut him down. It would have happened eventually. Nico paused. Elena, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She thought about the past 3 weeks. The safety, the stability, the way he'd kept every promise he'd made. Yes, I trust you. Good. Romano will explain more when he gets there. And Elena? Yeah, this will be over soon, I promise. The line went dead. Elena woke Marco, explained quickly, and they packed in frantic silence. By the time Romano arrived, they were ready. He looked grim, professional, a gun visible at his hip. What happened? Elena demanded as they rushed to the car. Tommy's people hit one of Mr. Cardano's warehouses. Tried to make it look like a rival family. It didn't work. Romano drove fast but controlled. Mr. Cardano's handling it, but he wants you somewhere secure while he does. Where are we going? His personal estate. North Shore. It's the most secure location he has. Romano glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You'll be safe there. He's not taking any chances with you. The estate was massive, gated, with actual security guards, set on what had to be acres of land. The house itself looked like something from a movie, all stone and expensive architecture. Romano led them inside to a wing that he explained was for guests. Stay here. Don't leave the property. There are guards everywhere, but they're for your protection. Romano's expression was serious. Mr. Cardano will come by when he can, but he's busy dealing with Tommy's people. Is he in danger? Elena asked. Mr. Cardano is always in danger. It's the job. Romano squeezed her shoulder. But he's very good at what he does. Try not to worry. After Romano left, Elena and Marco explored their temporary home. The guest wing had 3 bedrooms, a full kitchen, a living area with a TV, everything they could possibly need. But it also felt like a cage, however luxurious. This is insane, Marco said, looking out the window at the grounds. This is like a movie. Are we really hiding from loan sharks at a mafia boss's mansion? Apparently. Elena sank onto the couch. I'm sorry, Marco. I'm so sorry I got us into this. You didn't get us into anything. You were trying to keep me alive. Marco sat beside her. And honestly, this is the safest I've felt since Mom and Dad died. Yeah, it's scary that there are bad people out there, but we have good people protecting us. That's more than we've had in years. Elena pulled him close, grateful for his resilience. They spent the evening watching movies, trying to pretend everything was normal. But Elena couldn't stop thinking about Nico, about what he was doing, whether he was safe. It was 2 a.m. when she heard footsteps in the hallway. She sat up from where she'd been dozing on the couch, instantly alert. The door opened, and Nico walked in. He looked exhausted. His shirt was untucked, sleeves rolled up, hair disheveled. There was blood on his knuckles. Is that your blood? Elena asked, standing. Some of it. Nico moved to the kitchen, ran his hands under the faucet. Tommy Vega is dead. So are most of his key associates. The ones who aren't dead have left Chicago permanently. It's over. The matter-of-fact way. He said. It made Elena's stomach turn. You killed them. I did what was necessary to protect my territory and my people. That included you. Nico dried his hands, wincing slightly. I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm not asking you to. Elena moved closer. I'm asking if you're okay. Nico looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Why wouldn't I be? Because you just killed people. Because you're bleeding. Because you look exhausted. Elena took his hand, examining the split knuckles. Where's your first aid kit? I don't need. Where is it? She used the same tone he'd used on her at the hospital. Absolute. Something almost like amusement flickered in his eyes. Bathroom. Under the sink. Elena led him to the guest bathroom and made him sit on the edge of the tub. She cleaned his knuckles carefully, applied antibiotic ointment, wrapped them in gauze. The whole time, Nico watched her with an expression she couldn't read. You're taking care of me, he said quietly. No one takes care of me. Well, someone should. Elena finished wrapping his left hand. You take care of everyone else. That's my job. Doesn't mean you don't need care too. She met his eyes. Thank you. For protecting us. For ending the threat. You're thanking me for committing murder. I'm thanking you for keeping Marco safe. For making sure we don't have to live in fear. Elena's voice was steady. I'm not naive, Nico. I know what you are, what you do. But I also know you saved my life and gave us a future. That matters more to me than moral purity. Nico reached up with his freshly bandaged hand and cupped her face. You're either very wise or very foolish. I haven't decided which. Maybe both. Elena leaned into his touch. Are we safe now? Really safe? Yes. Tommy's organization is dissolved. Anyone who might have wanted revenge is either dead or smart enough to know coming after you means dying. Nico's thumb stroked her cheek. You can go back to your apartment. Tomorrow. Back to normal life. Normal life, working at your restaurant and living in your apartment with your security watching over us. Elena smiled slightly. That's not exactly normal. It's your version of normal now. Nico stood, towering over her in the small bathroom. Elena, I need you to understand something. What I feel for you, it's not going away. I've tried to keep it professional, to maintain distance, but when Tommy's people attacked my warehouse, all I could think about was getting you somewhere safe. Not my business assets, not my other properties. You. Elena's heart hammered. Nico, I'm not asking for anything right now. I just need you to know, His hand dropped from her face. You're important to me. More important than is probably wise. And I'll keep protecting you whether you return these feelings or not. But you deserve to know the truth. The honesty of it, the raw vulnerability from a man who showed vulnerability to no one, made Elena's chest tight. I feel something too, she admitted. I don't know what it is yet. It's too new, too complicated. But when you walked in bleeding tonight, my first thought wasn't fear. It was worry. For you. And I think that means something. It means you're as crazy as I am. But Nico smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Get some sleep. Romana will take you home tomorrow. And Elena? Yeah? Thank you. For taking care of my hands. For not being afraid of me after learning what I did tonight. His expression turned serious. For seeing me as more than just the monster who commits violence. You're not a monster. You're a man doing what he thinks is necessary to protect what's his. Elena stood on her toes and kissed his cheek gently. Go get some sleep. You look like you're about to collapse. Nico caught her hand before she could pull away completely. I'm glad I found you bleeding on my street. That's a terrible thing to be glad about. And yet, I am. He released her hand and headed for the door. Good night, Elena. After he left, Elena stood in the bathroom, her hand pressed to where she'd kissed his cheek, trying to process everything that had just happened. She was falling for a Mafia boss, a man who'd just admitted to killing people tonight and showed more vulnerability with her than he probably showed anyone. It should terrify her. Instead, it felt like the most honest thing in her life. They returned to the apartment the next day, and life resumed its new rhythm. But something fundamental had shifted between them. Nico no longer maintained careful distance. He came by the apartment more frequently, sometimes just to have coffee with Elena while Marco did homework. He called her during the day to check in, not about security or logistics, but just to hear her voice. Elena found herself looking forward to those moments, to the quiet conversations where he talked about his day, about problems with legitimate businesses and illegal ones with equal frustration, to the way he listened when she talked about difficult customers at the restaurant or Marco's progress at school, to the comfortable silence that developed between them, the kind that only came from genuine connection. 2 months passed like that. 2 months of growing closer, of learning each other's rhythms and quirks. 2 months of Nico's hand lingering on the small of her back when he guided her through doorways, of Elena finding excuses to touch his arm when they talked, of tension building between them, unspoken but increasingly impossible to ignore. Marco noticed, of course. You guys are dancing around each other like idiots, he said one night after Nico had left. Just kiss already and put everyone out of their misery. It's complicated. It's only complicated because you're both overthinking it. Marco rolled his eyes with the wisdom of 18 years. He's crazy about you. You're crazy about him. What's the problem? The problem was everything Elena couldn't say. That she was terrified of depending on someone again. That loving Nico meant accepting his world completely, the violence and danger that came with his territory. That once she crossed that line, there would be no going back. But she was tired of being afraid, tired of holding back. 3 days later, Nico invited her to dinner. Not at the restaurant, not with associates, just the two of them at his estate. Romana would stay with Marco, and Elena would have an evening without responsibilities, without watching eyes. She wore a simple black dress, nothing fancy, but it made her feel beautiful. Nico met her at the door wearing slacks and a dark sweater, more casual than she'd ever seen him, and somehow more dangerous for it. You look stunning. His eyes swept over her with appreciation that made her skin warm. You clean up nice yourself. Elena smiled, feeling uncharacteristically nervous. What's the occasion? Does there need to be one? Nico led her through the mansion to a private terrace overlooking the grounds. A table was set for 2, candles flickering in the evening breeze. I wanted to spend time with you, away from everything else. Dinner was prepared by Nico's personal chef, and it was incredible. But Elena barely tasted the food. She was too focused on Nico, on the way candlelight played across his features, on the way he watched her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Tell me something true, Nico said over dessert. Something you've never told anyone else. Elena considered. Sometimes I resent Marco. Not him, exactly. But what taking care of him cost me. I love him desperately, would die for him. But there are moments when I wonder what my life would have been if our parents hadn't died. If I'd gotten to be young and stupid instead of responsible and struggling. She met his eyes. That makes me a terrible person, doesn't it? It makes you human. Nico's expression was understanding. Sacrifice doesn't erase the cost. Loving someone doesn't mean you can't mourn what you gave up for them. Your turn. Something true. Nico was quiet for a long moment. When my mother died, part of me was relieved. Not that she was gone, but that I didn't have to be afraid for her anymore. In this life, the people you love are vulnerabilities, weapons your enemies can use against you. Her death taught me that lesson young. He paused. Until you, I'd convinced myself I didn't want that vulnerability again, that being alone was safer. And now? Now I realize being safe isn't the same as being alive. Nico stood, offering his hand. Dance with me. There was no music, but Elena took his hand anyway. He pulled her close, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers against his chest. They swayed slowly under the stars, the night quiet around them. Elena. His voice was low, intimate. I need to tell you something. Okay. I'm falling in love with you. I've been falling since the moment you apologized for bleeding on my street. Nico's hand tightened on her waist. And I need to know if you feel the same, or if I should start putting distance between us before this becomes impossible. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The moment of choice. The point where she either stepped into his world completely or walked away. She thought about the past 2 months. The safety, the way he'd kept every promise, the vulnerability he showed only to her, the way her chest tightened when he smiled, how she looked for him in every room, the way his absence felt like something missing. I'm falling too, she whispered. I'm terrified and probably insane, but I'm falling. Nico stopped moving. His hand came up to cup her face, his dark eyes searching hers. You're sure? Because once we do this, once we cross this line, I won't be able to let you go. You'll be mine, and I'll be yours, and that comes with everything I am. The danger, the violence, the complications. I know what I'm choosing. Elena placed her hand over his. I choose you. All of you. Nico kissed her then. Slow and deep and full of everything they'd been holding back for months. Elena melted into him, her hands sliding up to tangle in his hair, his arms wrapping around her like he was trying to pull her inside him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nico pressed his forehead to hers. Stay tonight, he said. Not for anything except being close. I just want you in my bed, in my arms, so I can wake up knowing you're real. Okay. Elena kissed him again, softer this time. I'll stay. They went to his bedroom, and true to his word, he simply held her. They lay facing each other in the dark, talking quietly about nothing and everything, fingers intertwined between them. Elena had never felt safer, more cherished, more seen. I'm going to spend the rest of my life protecting you, Nico whispered as she drifted toward sleep. You and Marco, you're my family now. We're not married. We will be, eventually, when you're ready. He kissed her forehead. Sleep, Elena. I've got you. She believed him. For the first time in her life, Elena Moretti fell asleep feeling completely, perfectly safe. The next morning, Elena woke up alone. Nico's side of the bed was cold, and for a moment panic gripped her. Had last night been a mistake? Had he changed his mind? Then she smelled coffee. She found him in the kitchen, already dressed in his usual suit, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw her, his expression softened. He ended the call immediately. Coffee's fresh. There's breakfast in the warmer. Nico crossed to her, kissed her thoroughly. Good morning. Good morning. Elena felt herself smiling like an idiot. You're already working? I'm always working, but I wanted to be here when you woke up. He poured her coffee, added cream exactly how she liked it. Romano's bringing Marco over in an hour. I thought we could have breakfast together, the 3 of us. You want to have breakfast with my teenage brother? He's part of you. That makes him important to me. Nico handed her the coffee. Besides, Marco and I need to have a conversation about his sister dating me. He deserves to know my intentions. Your intentions? Elena laughed. This isn't the 1800s. He's 18 years old and you're the only family he has. He deserves reassurance that I'm serious about you, that this isn't casual. Nico's expression was sincere. I respect him too much not to be clear about where this is going. Elena's chest tightened with emotion. You really mean that? I mean everything when it comes to you. He kissed her forehead. Now eat. You're still too thin. Breakfast with Marco was surprisingly normal. The teenager took one look at Elena and Nico and grinned knowingly. Finally, he said. I was starting to think you'd both die of stubborn independence before admitting you liked each other. Very funny. But Elena couldn't stop smiling. After breakfast, Nico asked to speak with Marco privately. Elena waited nervously in the living room, wondering what they were discussing. When they emerged 20 minutes later, Marco looked serious but satisfied. What did you talk about? Elena asked after Nico left. He told me he's in love with you, that his world is dangerous, but he'll do everything to keep us safe. That you're his priority now. Marco shrugged, and he asked for my blessing, which is old-fashioned but kind of cool. Did you give it? Yeah. He's good for you, Elena, better than anyone else could be. Marco smiled, and he's genuinely worried about keeping me safe too. That matters. Elena hugged him tight. I love you. You know that? I know. Love you too. Marco pulled back. Now can we talk about the fact that you're dating a literal mob boss? Because that's insane, and also kind of awesome. Elena laughed. For the first time in years, everything felt right. The next 3 weeks were the happiest of Elena's life. She worked at Domenico's, came home to Marco and their beautiful apartment, and spent evenings with Nico. They went to dinners, took walks along the lake, spent quiet nights at his estate talking until dawn. Nico introduced her to more of his world. She met his legitimate business partners, attended charity galas where everyone knew who he really was but pretended otherwise. She learned the code, the careful language people used around power, and she fell more deeply in love with him every day. But happiness was never permanent in Nico's world. The threat came from an unexpected direction. Antonio Russo, head of a rival family in the Western Territories, had been watching Nico's increased attention to Elena, had marked her as a vulnerability. The attack happened on a Thursday night. Elena was closing at the restaurant, walking to her car in the parking garage. She never saw them coming. A hand clamped over her mouth, arm around her waist, dragging her backward. She fought, kicked, tried to scream, but there were 3 of them, and they were professional. They shoved her into a van, bound her wrists with zip ties, covered her eyes with a blindfold. Terror flooded through her, sharp and absolute. Message for Cardano, one of them said. His voice was rough, Eastern European accent. Tell him, Antonio. Russo says hello, and that he should have been more careful with his toys. The drive lasted maybe 20 minutes. When they stopped, rough hands pulled her from the van and into a building. Cold air, the smell of rust and oil. A warehouse, probably. They shoved her into a chair, tied her ankles. One of them removed her blindfold, and Elena blinked in harsh fluorescent light. The man in front of her was in his 50s, expensively dressed despite the warehouse setting. Dark hair shot with silver, cold eyes that calculated her value. Miss Moretti. Antonio Russo smiled, and it was terrifying. I've heard so much about you. Cardano's little waitress. The woman who made the great Nico Cardano soft. He'll kill you for this. Elena's voice shook, but the words were certain. Perhaps. But first, we're going to have a conversation about his Northern Territory operations, and you're going to help me convince him to be reasonable. Antonio pulled out a knife, the blade catching the light. I don't particularly want to hurt you, but I will if Cardano doesn't cooperate. So let's hope he values you as much as I think he does. Elena's mind raced. She needed to stall, needed to give Nico time to find her. He would find her. She knew that with absolute certainty. What do you want? She forced herself to meet Antonio's eyes. Smart girl. Straight to business. Antonio circled her chair. Cardano controls 3 warehouses in the north side. I want 2 of them. He gives them to me, you go home unharmed. Simple transaction. He won't negotiate with you. Not after you took me. Then you'll die, and he'll learn that everyone he loves is a weakness. Antonio's knife pressed against her cheek, not cutting but threatening. I'm sending him a photo now. Let's see how long his pride lasts when he sees you like this. One of the men took a photo with his phone. Elena tried to look brave, defiant, but she was terrified and knew it showed. The phone rang minutes later. Antonio answered, putting it on speaker. Russo. Nico's voice was deadly calm. The kind of calm that came before violence. Cardano, I have something of yours. Antonio smiled at Elena. Beautiful girl. Be a shame if something happened to her. If you hurt her, I will burn your entire organization to the ground. Every business, every property, every person you've ever cared about. I will make you watch while I destroy everything, and then I will kill you slowly." Nico's voice never rose, but the promise in it was absolute. "Let her go now, and I'll make your death quick." Bold words for a man whose weakness is tied to a chair in my warehouse. Antonio's knife traced down Elena's throat. 2 warehouses, Cardano, north side. Transfer the deeds by midnight and she goes home. Refuse, and I start sending you pieces of her. Silence. Elena's heart hammered. She knew Nico wouldn't give up his territory, wouldn't negotiate with terrorists. But she also knew he loved her. "You have 2 hours to reconsider," Nico said finally. 2 hours to let Elena go and leave Chicago forever. After that, I'm coming for you. And Russo? I'm bringing everyone. The line went dead. Antonio laughed. Arrogant bastard. He thinks he can threaten me? He turned to his men. Double the guards. When Cardano comes, we'll be ready. But Elena saw something in Antonio's eyes. A flicker of uncertainty. Because when Nico Cardano promised violence, he delivered. Now she just had to survive long enough for him to find her. Time moved strangely in the warehouse. Elena couldn't see her watch. Couldn't track how long she'd been there. Her wrists ached from the zip ties. Her shoulders burned from being bound. Antonio had left her with 2 guards while he prepared defenses. The men didn't talk to her, just watched with bored expressions. Professionals doing a job. Elena tested her bonds carefully. The zip ties were tight, but there was a little give if she twisted her wrists. Not much. Maybe enough. She thought about Nico. About Marco, who would be terrified when she didn't come home. About Romano, who'd promised to keep them safe and would feel responsible for this. And she thought about what Nico would do when he found this warehouse. The violence would be horrific. She knew that, but she also knew she'd be glad for it. These men had taken her, threatened her, and Nico would make them pay. An hour passed, maybe more. Then she heard it. Gunfire. Distant at first, then closer. Shouting. More gunfire. The 2 guards jumped to attention, weapons drawn. "Stay here," one of them ordered. Then they both rushed toward the commotion. Elena worked frantically at her bonds. The zip tie was loosening, her wrists slick with sweat and a little blood. Almost. The door burst open. Nico stood there, gun in hand, his suit jacket gone, shirt splattered with blood. His eyes swept the room, found her, and something fierce and possessive flashed across his face. Elena. He crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling a knife from his belt and cutting her bonds. "Are you hurt?" I'm okay. Her hands were shaking too badly to be useful. "Nico, there are more of them, all dead or contained." Nico cupped her face, checking her for injuries with frantic intensity. "Your face. Did he cut you?" "Just scared me. He didn't actually hurt me." Elena grabbed his wrists. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't?" Nico pulled her up, wrapping his arms around her. "Elena, when I got that call, when I saw that photo, I've never been that terrified in my life. You promised him violence. I delivered." His voice was cold. "Antonio Russo is dead. So are most of his men. The rest will wish they were by the time I'm done with them." Elena should have been horrified, should have been disturbed by the casual way he discussed murder. Instead, she just held him tighter. "Take me home," she whispered. "Please. I just want to go home. Always." Nico lifted her easily, carrying her through the warehouse. Elena kept her face pressed against his chest, not wanting to see the bodies she knew littered their path. Romano was waiting outside with the car. When he saw them, relief flooded his face. "Marco?" Elena asked immediately. "Safe at the estate with 4 guards. He knows you're alive." Romano opened the car door. "He'll be relieved to see you in person." The drive to the estate felt longer than it was. Nico held Elena the entire way, his arms tight around her, his face buried in her hair. She felt him shaking slightly, the adrenaline and fear finally catching up. "I thought I'd lost you," he said quietly. "For 20 minutes after that call, I thought you might already be dead." "I'm here. I'm okay." Elena pulled back to look at him. "You saved me. I should have prevented it in the first place. Should have had more security on you. Should have anticipated. You can't control everything." Elena cut him off. "You can't prevent every threat. But you came for me when it mattered. That's what counts." At the estate, Marco nearly tackled her with a hug. "Don't ever do that again," he said, voice muffled against her shoulder. "I thought I'd lost you. I'm okay. I promise." Elena held him tight, grateful beyond words that he was safe, that they both were. That night, after Marco finally went to bed, Elena and Nico sat in his room. He'd cleaned up, changed clothes, but there was still tension in his shoulders. "This is my life," he said quietly. "This is what being with me means. People will use you to get to me. You'll be a target. I know. You could leave. Take Marco somewhere far away. I'd set you up with enough money to start over, to be safe." Nico's voice was rough. "I'd let you go if that's what you need." Elena turned to face him fully. "Do you want me to go?" "God, no." The words burst out of him. "But I want you safe more than I want you with me. I'm safest with you, because you'll move heaven and earth to protect me." Elena took his hands. Today proved that. "Nico, I'm not leaving. I love you. I choose this life, with all its complications and dangers. I choose you." Something broke in his expression. He pulled her close, holding her like she might disappear. "I love you. So damn much it terrifies me." "Good. Be terrified together." Elena kissed him. "Now come to bed. We both need sleep." They lay tangled together in the dark, neither quite able to relax completely. The trauma of the day hung over them, sharp and recent. "I killed 17 men today," Nico said quietly. "For you. And I'd do it again without hesitation." "I know." Elena's hand found his in the darkness. "Thank you for coming for me." "Always. For the Bray. The rest of our lives, Elena. You're mine to protect now. That's not changing." "Good. Because you're mine to love. And that's not changing either." They fell asleep like that, holding each other in the dark. Trauma and love wound together in the complicated reality of their life. 3 months later, Nico proposed properly. Not in the heat of crisis or emotion, but on a quiet Sunday morning at the estate. Just the two of them in the garden. Coffee cooling on a nearby table. Early spring flowers beginning to bloom. "Marry me," he said simply, producing a ring that was beautiful and understated. "Not because of the danger, not because of what we've been through. Marry me because I want forever with you. Because waking up without you doesn't make sense anymore." "Yes." Elena didn't need to think. Yes, absolutely yes. The wedding was small, immediate family only, which for them meant Marco, Romano, Sofia from the restaurant, and a handful of Nico's most trusted associates. They married in the estate's garden on a perfect June afternoon. When Nico slipped the ring on her finger and promised to love and protect her for the rest of his life, Elena believed him absolutely. When she promised the same, she meant every word. Their life together wasn't simple. There were still threats, still danger inherent in Nico's world, but they faced it together, building something solid out of circumstances that had started with Elena bleeding on a street and apologizing for it. 6 months after the wedding, Elena found out she was pregnant. Nico cried when she told him, actual tears, and spent the next 9 months being obsessively protective. Their daughter was born on a snowy February morning. They named her Sofia, after the woman who'd given Elena her first real chance at Domenico's. She was perfect, tiny and fierce, and loved beyond measure. Marco, now 19, and thriving at university, came home that weekend to meet his niece. He held her carefully, his expression soft with wonder. "You did good, sis," he said. "You built something amazing out of nothing." Elena looked at Nico, who held their daughter with such tender care, looked at Marco, healthy and happy and safe, looked at the life they'd built from the ashes of her old one. "We all did," she said. "We all did good." That night, with Sofia sleeping in her bassinet and Nico's arms around her, Elena reflected on how far she'd come. From apologizing for bleeding on a street, to this, a family, a home, a future that felt secure. "What are you thinking?" Nico whispered against her hair. "That I'm glad I bled on your street that night." Elena smiled. "That you found me when I needed finding most. Best thing that ever happened to me." Nico kissed her temple. "Finding you bleeding and apologizing, like your suffering was an inconvenience to everyone else. It changed everything. It gave me everything." He pulled her closer. "You gave me everything, Elena Cardano." Elena fell asleep in her husband's arms, their daughter breathing softly nearby, knowing she was exactly where she belonged. She'd apologized for bleeding on Nico Cardano's floor that night. terrified and broken. He'd carried her to his car and, in doing so, had carried her into a completely new life. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It wasn't even close. But it was hers, theirs, and that made it perfect. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.